Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode in my Dialing In series for our Line 6 Helix, and today I'm going to talk about something a little different, and that is trying to create a tone using no actual amp model in the Helix. You know, sometimes I think when we have a unit like the Helix for a long time, we can maybe get a little bit set in our ways and always go to maybe our go-to amp models or our go-to method of working. And I thought it would be kind of cool if I threw out some ideas that maybe, hopefully, at least spark some new ideas for everybody who uses the Helix so they can kind of play around and maybe discover some new tones. It would be kind of cool. And that is using no amp block or particular amp for our preset. So let's go over to HX Edit and take a look at what I have going here. So here we are in HX Edit. Now, just to avoid having to have you watch me create the blocks I wanted in place, I kind of did this in advance, and I'm going to take you through kind of my train of thought of how I'm thinking here. Right now, all I have turned on is a little bit of reverb and a little bit of delay. So you're just hearing my Vigier Expert Strat style guitar going straight into Helix Native, which is what I'm using for this particular video. And that would sound like this. Now what I did is I went right to the end of my chain and I brought in a retro reel block set at 7.5 inches per second, and I'm going to bring the saturation up to about 1. To mimic that feel of playing onto tape. And I'm also going to put my standard LA Studio comp at the end. Probably not going to see it do anything right now because we're not hitting it with enough signal. It's just the instrument level signal. Okay, so the first thing that we are still going to want to have, especially if we're going to use any overdrive or distortion, is some sort of cab block. Okay, so I've chosen the 412 Greenback 25 with an 87 condenser, 1-inch back, low cut and at 80 hertz, high cut at 8 kilohertz, just like we would have it when it came up. Now, what that sounds like, kind of dulls the sound down as we would expect it to. Okay, so what I thought about doing after that is adding in the Studio Tube Pre. And I did a video about using the Studio Tube Pre as kind of more of an overdrive pedal, maybe a couple weeks ago, and that went over really well. A lot of people really enjoyed that. So I have it set with the gain on 10, polarity at normal, sensitivity at mic, low and high cut off, and the level at 5.5. And just going into the delay and reverb, retro reel, and LA Studio comp in the cab, it sounds like this. That's on the neck pickup. If I bring that down to the bridge pickup, already we have kind of a nice little clean tone. Now what I want to check there is if I go over to my LA Studio comp, I want to feed it with enough signal or get the peak reduction up enough that I'm going to get a little bit of compression out of that. You see, now it kind of peaks in there a little bit. I'm going to leave it there. As we add some other things in here, we may find that that gets a little more compression. We may have to adjust that again. So that's what the gain cranked to 10 on the pre. Now, what we have is a little bit of control on our cab, but I also added in a low and high shelf EQ like I oftentimes do. And I took that, set both the high and low frequencies at 650 hertz, dropped all the frequencies below that by 2 dB, and cranked all the frequencies above that by 4 dB. So we start to get a nice little clean tone there. It's back on the neck pickup, back to the bridge pickup. So we can really adjust how much sparkle we want with the high shelf. If I brought that back to 2 dB. It's gonna warm it up a bit. I was kind of liking it up here at 4 though. Let's even maybe go to 3 on that and see how that works. So I'm really kind of digging that. Now, from there, we can decide to choose on a flavor of overdrive if we want to punch that in and out. And I chose the Diana drive. Kicking this in it with the gain at 7.5, the voicing at 10, tone at 4.4, and level at 3. Now after that, we may want to adjust our levels just to keep things hitting the front of the studio tube pretty different. But we may also want to just to choose a different flavor of overdrive. We could grab something like a Minotaur. Play around with the controls on that. Or even go to something very different, maybe to the Ratatouille distortion. So we can really change the flavor of what we have going through there with different overdrives. Like I said, I really like the Diana drive. It's liking it with the voicing all the way up. Let's bring that back, bring our tone back a touch. Now what would that sound like if we took the Studio Tube pre away? We'd obviously have to crank the level way up. Versus having the studio tube pre-in. A different flavor to it. Again, you're going to be able to adjust things to your taste. Maybe less gain on the studio tube pre, maybe no studio tube pre, and just higher level on our overdrive. Then we could also swap out different cabinets. You know, I could go to something like the 112 US Princess. It's going to change the entire sound of it. Or maybe the 112 Lead 80. One by 8 small tweed. So we can really change things up by choosing different cabinets and different mics. Take something like the 212 Interstate, put a ribbon mic on it. So lots of possibilities, and I could sit here tweaking for days here and come up with different cab combinations, microphone combinations, different overdrive pedals, maybe the studio tube pre, maybe no studio tube pre, really whatever is going to suit it for yourself. Now if I turn the retro reel off and the LA studio tube comp off, really prefer with that retro reel on. And the tube comp really give it some vintage goo to it. So that's kind of the ideas I came up with if I was to just kind of attack and say, I'm not allowed to use an actual amp model in the Helix. What kind of chain could I put together? And I don't know, maybe some of you will like these types of tones, maybe some of you won't, but there's a lot of variety and possibilities here, and I think it will maybe spark some new ideas, hopefully, that we won't just automatically reach for that amp model that we love so much in the Helix and always go to. And maybe we could try something like this if you need a different tone in the studio or live for a particular song or section of a song. Maybe you'll find what you need once we start kind of thinking outside the box and just taking some blocks like this that you maybe wouldn't have thought about using together. Now, one word is any of our heavy or overdrive distortion blocks we would want to have before our speaker cabinet. Obviously, if I was to turn my speaker cabinet off, I'm going to get this type of sound. I'm going to get a very abrasive tone, and the speaker cabinet's going to kind of make that sound a little bit better. What if I was to drag that speaker cab right to the end? you'll have to decide if that's something that you prefer. But just some ideas. Hopefully that was interesting. I just thought it'd be fun to do something a little different where I'm not grabbing an amp block all the time and maybe just try to spark some new ideas. If you didn't find that interesting, sorry. If you did, great. I hope you got some ideas and I hope you like some of those tones. And you can mess around with some similar concepts yourself within Helix Native, VHX Stomp, PodGo, Helix, Helix LT, whatever you would like. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please like the video, share it with anybody who you think would get some enjoyment or use out of watching it. And I will be back really soon. Hit the little subscribe button and the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in, and ciao for now.